Morning people, welcome back to F Politics. Do you want to see some genuinely horrendous far-right gaslighting? Well, I've got you covered. Listen to how the other panellists on LBC last night responded to the journalist Natasha Devon when she was talking about the Reform Party and how it's affecting the Tory Party.
Any comments on Reform? Otherwise I'll move on.
I mean, the populism that is creeping into the Conservative Party really terrifies me. Where you've got people who, they make no sense. You know, your Generics, your Badenochs, your Andersons, your Gullises, who are there pretty much on a far-right ticket.
Now, she gave us evidence, some examples of that far-right ticket. She mentions Robert Jenrick, the guy who told an asylum centre to paint over a cartoon of Mickey Mouse because it was too welcoming to refugee children. She mentions Lee Anderson, the guy who told refugees to fuck off back to France, and who has explicitly said he plans to use trans people as a culture war tool to win the next election. She mentions Kemi Badenoch, who said it was illegal to teach kids about white privilege, even though white privilege is a matter of governmental record. And Jonathan Gullis, who said those teachers should all be fired. So, rabid hostility towards foreigners? Tick. Facilitating racism? Tick. Censoring academics? Tick. Seems like she's on pretty solid ground to use the term far right, and she carries on.
And I want to see a grown-up Tory party. I'm not a Tory, you know this about me, Ian, but if there were to be a Labour government, I would love there to be an opposition that I could see some of what they were saying was credible and they were there to challenge in a grown-up way. And when we see this lurch to the right and this populism, that doesn't happen. So I really hope the Conservatives choose not to try and soak up that Reform vote.
So all she's done there is imply that the Reform Party is essentially far right and that there are sections of the Tory Party that are trying to copy them. And here's the response.
I always slightly bristle when someone says far right in relation to those people. I kind of know where you're coming from, but that's a phrase that's traditionally been used for the racist right.
Yeah.
And I don't think
it's dangerous to
I don't think you would class any of those people as sort of part of the racist right.
But why? Because the government's own data says that if you're from an ethnic minority, you're more likely to be stopped and searched by police, you're more likely to be in poverty, and you're going to find it 80% harder to get a job in order to escape that poverty based simply on the sound of your name. So that system in its effect is racist, so making it illegal to teach that system even exists is supporting racism. But Iain Dale has this habit of wearing this mantle of, oh, I'm just slightly right-wing, but he opens the door to the genuinely far right, like he did with Darren Grimes, right before he hosted this show.
Slavery was not genocide. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many damn blacks in Africa or in Britain, would there? You know, an awful lot of them survived.
And Iain Dale even hosted David Starkey on his show a year later, so after he said that. And remember, far right is a relative term. So either Iain Dale doesn't think that what you just heard is far right rhetoric, or he does think it is and hosted somebody who he knew was far right on his show. Which is it? But here he is giving a lecture on what is and isn't far right.
Do we need to be a bit more careful about some of the descriptions that we use?
I think there's a lot of what they say that you could argue is a racist dog whistle and has an undercurrent that's appealing to racists.
Yeah. And Angela Epstein then comes in.
I think the problem with that argument, which I appreciate why you're saying it, is that then we devalue the power of real far-right politics.
No, Angela, you devalue the concept of far right if you never call it out. If your threshold for calling something far right is that they have to actually be explicitly saying that they hate minority groups, which they'll never do because the far right is smart enough to know they can't get away with that, you make the term far right meaningless if you can't even use it to describe somebody who tells refugees to fuck off. And then there's ex-Labour and pro-Brexit MP Caroline Flint.
Well, I think you just have to be careful about the phrases you use around these right-wing parties, because that was a mistake with the 2016 referendum. Too many people jumped onto a bandwagon to accuse people of voting Leave as being really right-wing.
But Natasha didn't accuse Tory and Reform voters of being far right, she accused the politicians. And if you're going to link it to the 2016 referendum, well, Nigel Farage was one of the main politicians for Brexit. The man who stood in front of a photo of hundreds of brown faces to scare people about European migration. Because remember, the UK wasn't part of the EU's common asylum policy, so none of the people in that photograph had any EU-based rights to enter the UK. The only way those people could enter the UK is if they stayed in, for example, Germany for 7 years, became essentially German, learnt German, got German citizenship, and then came to the UK under EU citizenship. But they would be German citizens, so the only way that that photograph would be relevant would be to point to their ethnic origin. So are we going to pretend that Nigel Farage Farage isn't racist? Because that's my main point about the Reform Party, because we're being told that a party that was originally set up by Catherine Blakelock, who had to leave because of Islamophobic comments, that was then led by Richard Tice, who also set up leave.eu, which regularly uses anti-Semitic imagery, showing rich Jews controlling politics, a party that is regularly fronted by Nigel Farage, and whose logo is a goddamn arrow pointing to the right, isn't far right? And those three panellists all ganged up to tell her off for even suggesting that. This is what we call far-right gaslighting. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics so politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.